You're watching The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ MV Angela Yee, Charlamagne the Guy. We are The Breakfast Club. We got a special guest in the building, Angela Rye.
AR, what's happening?
Good morning.
Hey.
So what are we doing, man?
Trying to win some elections.
Okay, midterms are right around the corner.
Midterms are right around the corner. For those of you who do not know, it is Tuesday, November 6th. There are some very important races. I think one of the most important things we're not talking about is how this midterm impacts how districts are drawn. For those people who don't know what that is, there are people who represent you based on your geographical location. They're your House of Representatives or Assembly members. If you live in some states, they call them something different. And definitely the people you send to Congress through the House of Representatives. Those maps are drawn through the United States Census process, which is right before the 2020 election. So this election decides that. When we start talking about midterms and whether or not you're sending people to elected office or to represent you, this is what decides that, right? If you don't participate in this particular race, there are people who are drawing those maps, have say on who represents you, and they may not look like you, they may not think like you, and that is how we're in the mess we are right now, especially in the United States House of Representatives.
Why is it important for Democrats to get control of the House and Senate this year?
You know, that's a hard one. And I would say to you, if you look around at everything that's going on, Donald Trump is not my favorite. Normally, he's not Envy's favorite either. But the last couple of times, you've not asked me about impeachment, so maybe you've given.
Yes, he has.
Yes, I have.
No,
every time he has.
Not today and not last time. He normally starts with that. No, but I'm saying you normally start with that. Anyway,
We've given up on it.
we're not fighting yet. We on the same side.
He wants to wear Yeezys, and so because
I'm not wearing my Yeezys right now.
Okay, before we go down that rabbit
back in the
hole, because
closet
I got a rabbit hole for you on that. Before we go down that way, I would just say to you, I really believe this particular president now more than ever needs some checks and balances, right? Like we have to ensure that there are people who can hold him accountable. I'm sure there are hearings processes going on Russia and all of that, but it's not enough of a checks and balance when, for example, the current speaker, Paul Ryan, who of course is retiring, goes on TV and talks about tribalism in politics on both sides and not recognizing the severe damage that we've seen done in just reinvigorating white supremacy in this country and racism. We have to have some way to control some of that.
sexism.
Why did I know Paul Ryan was retiring?
He's stepping down.
Wow. I didn't know
Anyway, but that's not
Okay.
the point. The bigger point is we have to have some folks who can say, you know what, this guy's going too far. So, yeah.
So now where should we start? We talk about these elections. Where are the places that we are most needed? Where it really, really makes a
There are
difference.
some very important
and a
races
lot of our
going
own
on,
people
so-
are running. So
Yeah.
we know Andrew Gillum in Florida. So where else?
Yes,
Georgia.
Stacey Abrams in Georgia. There are DA races that folks need to be paying attention to. I really hate the question, where do our votes really matter? Because our votes really matter everywhere. They do.
Right.
But I understand what you're saying. There's some historic opportunities here. Ben Jealous in Maryland, who's running for governor. While the polls haven't looked that great, I think is still one that folks should be excited about. Stephen Horsford is a former member of Congress who's running again in Las Vegas. He was the first black man to become Senate Majority Leader in the Nevada Senate, and then he also ran and became the first black member of Congress from Nevada. He's running again. He lost the first time because the DCCC didn't give him the money he needed, but that's another story for another day. There's also Ayanna Pressley in Boston, Massachusetts, who will become the first black woman to ever represent any congressional district in Massachusetts. And then there's Johanna Hayes, who's running in Connecticut, and would also be sent to the United States House of Representatives. From an issue standpoint as well, Lucy McBath, who lost her son Jordan Davis in that horrible shooting in Florida, where this white man came up, approached the passenger side of that car, and shot into that. She was mobilized by that moment. She has used her power to not only engage and help to change laws, but now she's also running for Congress in Georgia, which is another really strong opportunity for us. So I think what's so interesting to me, and it's been on my heart all week, is people keep putting up this meme on Instagram that says, if your votes don't matter, why are folks trying so hard to keep you from voting? And I think it's a really compelling point because they're not just telling you don't vote, right? Now it's you're registered to vote, you're ready to go vote, finally, but maybe you missed 2 or 3 elections. The Supreme Court in June decided that if you're in Ohio or Florida and they have this particular rule on the books, it's constitutional. You can get purged from the rolls for not participating in 3 elections. Maybe you were, off to war and didn't get your absentee ballot. Maybe someone was sick in your family. Maybe you had a job that wouldn't let you off, although they're supposed to. You can get purged from the rolls and be forced to re-register.
And they're also saying if you made a little error, like maybe with your name not matching exactly, then they can also tell you that you can't vote.
In Georgia, there's a strict name match rule. And what's so crazy about this one, Angela, is the Secretary of State in Georgia is Brian Kemp. You know who else he is? Stacey Abrams' opponent. He has a direct interest in not only purging voters from the rolls, but also ensuring that you cannot participate in this particular election.
Isn't that a conflict of interest?
Yes, it's a conflict of interest. And he should have to recuse himself.
Yeah, absolutely.
But because he's a Secretary of State and because there are a lot of folks out there, racism still alive, they don't want Stacey to win. They're not pushing back on this, even though they know it's not just a conflict of interest. I think it's severely unethical. It should be illegal, frankly. So there are lawsuits from the ACLU, from the Lawyers Committee pushing that very same issue.
And also, if you're disenfranchised because of incarceration, they're saying that it's really hard. How do they decide that you're allowed to get your right to vote back?
Well, there's a really overly encumbered process that people have to go through to get their voting rights restored if they've committed a felony. Particularly in Florida, I think this is a great time to bring up the fact that there is an amendment on the ballot, Amendment 4, which would restore felon voting rights for nonviolent criminals. I think that is another important reason to go vote. Sometimes it's not the candidate. Sometimes it's also an issue. We are issue-based voters overwhelmingly as people of color, and that's one that's a really, really important one.
When we talk about issues, what issues should black people be looking for during the midterms?
When you say looking for, are you talking about at the polls actually happening or agenda items?
Like the people we should vote for, like what should we be looking for on their agendas?
Yeah.
Sometimes people just go and they don't know who they're voting for, and they're like, I'm just going to vote
Democrat.
Yeah. And I think that if you are going to vote based on what you expect people's interests to be for you, you have to remember, and I say this all the time in speeches, you don't just hire someone. You guys have the juice bar. You don't just hire someone and just say, okay, now just go be free. They have a certain amount of expectations, right? There are things they have to do. They have to go to work on time. They have to meet your needs. They have to make sure that your interests are met. Why don't we do that with elected officials?
Word.
They are legitimately paid by our taxpayer dollars. We should be holding them accountable. These are my expectations of you. I voted for you, but that was just the first step. So, we need to make sure that we're pushing an agenda. To your question, I think that it is minimum wage or a livable wage. There's a research that just came out that said more than 6 in 10 Americans cannot pay their bills. Like they have to decide based on what they're earning at work. That's not fair. There are issues surrounding housing and gentrification in communities. We should be addressing that often. You should be into this. You're a property developer over there. There are also issues surrounding criminal justice reform, how people are going to jail, whether or not there's recreational weed and they support it because not because people want to get high, but if you do, whatever. But also because there are a number of folks who look like us in jail because they sold a 20 sack or whatever. But now there are whole stores where you could order your weed online and there's no penalty. So we're just talking about parity. I would say the first frontier is parity and equity and making sure that you're pushing folks and electing people who represent those interests.
Now, question, I want to ask you about what were your thoughts of Kanye West visiting Donald Trump? Now, when I first seen the clips, I was highly upset. He looked like he hasn't seen his dad in 8 years, and that was the first time he seen his dad and giving his dad a hug and just really loving a man.
He was licking kneecaps and sucking boots.
He was. But then when I actually watched the full interview, I wasn't as mad. I don't know if he's going to get through to Donald Trump, but the things he was talking about wasn't that bad. He was talking about stopping frisk in Chicago and not doing it. He was talking about
the curriculums in the schools.
It was nice to have a real policy
He was
maker
trying
there with him,
to change
so
the
it wasn't
hat
a stream of
and trying to
consciousness.
get Colin and Trump to meet with each other. So it wasn't as bad as people thought, besides the bootlicking. But what were your thoughts on it?
Besides the bootlicking,
It was a
large part.
There was a lot of bootlicking, but
Did anything get accomplished?
No, nothing got accomplished. And I think that's the reality. Like if you, if I have a platform, I'll do it this way. I have the opportunity to DJ at the White House.
Okay.
That's not my role. That's not my lane. That's your lane. I should have called you, right? And I think one and the same, just because you have a platform with someone doesn't mean that you're the best messenger. right?
But if you play Public Enemy all night, fight the power, is it that bad?
But I think that
What?
well, I don't know.
I'm just saying, like,
I don't understand what that
power to
meant.
the people type of music.
I
Like,
get what Angela's saying.
even if it's not your job, he's the only one that's
I'm
getting
saying
invited.
it's not my.
Kim
I'm
Kardashian's
saying like
job
I'm
either,
not.
but-
My transitions are gonna be off. I'm saying like
It's gonna be a terrible party.
It's gonna be a terrible. Thanks, Angela, for
Right.
that shade. But yes, like it's not gonna be a good look. That's not my role. And all I'm saying to you is, just because you have an ear with someone doesn't mean that you're the best speaker. Just because you have the opportunity to present things that you are passionate about doesn't mean that people should hear from you or can't even receive
But
it
Kim
from
K,
you.
for example, right?
Okay.
She's not that person. But it
Okay,
seems
but she
like
brought her a lawyer with her named Sean Chapman Holly, who I know very well, is a mentor of mine, who is that person.
Gotcha.
You know
Kanye
what
had
I'm-
Larry Hoover's lawyer with him.
Okay,
I'm just saying. Yeah,
I'm just-
But we're talking about policy changes here, right?
You
And-
said he brought up stop and frisk policy. Who was the stop and frisk expert in that meeting?
That's true.
So I'm just saying, I wish
or
that.
the education expert.
What
Who was in
honestly,
there?
what I saw is two egotistical, egomaniacal, narcissistic
Narcissistic.
people sitting down, patting each other on the back.
Stroking each
And
other
that's what
off.
we keep forgetting. We keep talking about Kanye and all these non-traditional messages. We got a non-traditional president. These people that know policy and know what
I
they're
feel like
talking
you
about, that
might-
shit goes over Trump's head.
But I feel like you might be trying to justify this visit, and we just can't.
No,
Like, and I
because
hear
even Martin
you.
Luther King Jr. went with committees when he went to go to the White House.
They, not only that, but they had planning meetings.
Yeah,
there was a
absolutely.
fully fleshed out agenda that was connected to what they were doing on the ground when they were protesting, connected to economic boycotts of businesses, connected to marches,
Absolutely.
connected to a desired legislative outcome. What did he say is the legislation he wants to move?
He definitely didn't have
He
any
don't
legislation.
know.
Play basketball while you do math.
Nah, but he wants to build a new plane. That's what he did.
Shut up.
Oh
Now
my
he said he wants to bring factories to Chicago
He
to
did.
give people jobs because stop and frisk won't work. We need to give these people opportunities.
What data did he rely on to determine that a factory job was going to in any way directly?
But we do know our people need jobs
I'm
now.
understood, but I'm just
Anybody
saying,
can go in
like,
there and say, we need jobs.
I
We need-
understand.
right.
I
A lot of
agree
people
with
don't have
that.
the
but I think
the
what I'm
president's
saying,
ear,
and then here's the other thing. He went in there talking about China, but then he got caught on his hypocrisy because Yeezys are made in China.
Well, he said that he doesn't want to make them in China anymore because he wants to bring the factories to America to give people in Chicago jobs.
But it's too expensive. It's $300.
I bet you to make America great again hats are made in China too.
But you're right, though. I mean,
Facts.
because I think people don't realize that
Let's
when,
look it up. I
when
bet
Martin
you.
Luther King Jr. was going through the White House, they had a crew. It wasn't just Martin Luther King Jr.
And also all the cameras and making it a huge event like that and trying to get attention from it. I think that was really crazy.
We have a
too.
celebrity
He was
president.
basically just doing a stream of consciousness of things like stop and frisk is wrong and this and look at this plane and it wasn't anything I feel that got accomplished in that.
Well, and no, something did get accomplished. We are all talking about it,
Right. Yeah,
right.
which is
what they
again
wanted.
egomaniacal. Yes, that's exactly what they want. And I think the unfortunate part about this is, Kanye West, I believe, used to be a messenger for the people. I believe he used to speak for, a certain group of black folks, if not every type of black person could relate to what he said in his music. And now I just don't know who he's speaking for. I do think it's detrimental, and I think that people should be held to the carpet, not just Kanye, Ben Carson, and the other people who support this type of nonsense. It is literally dangerous. And they just have to be held to account for that.
Now,
I'm
do you-
When are
sorry.
the Democrats going to be held accountable?
I think Democrats are being held accountable.
Because I think that this year we're all voting out of fear again. Like I feel like we're being pimped again by the Democrats to just
Tell me,
run.
what-
Because I
you
love
been
Kamala
talking to?
Harris, but Kamala Harris posted vote Democrat, vote female without giving any reasons why. Just go vote.
I think that the
Representation.
Instagram graphic that you sent me had a bunch of reasons why.
And none of them said black rights,
But
African American rights.
I think here's a tough reality. And this is unfortunate, and it's something that the Democrats should have to reconcile with. Overwhelmingly, we're told that identity politics have no place in our politics, right? But they make exceptions for white blue collar workers all of the time.
LGBT rights.
I think, but even that, there are people who
Immigrant
are
rights.
even that there are people who push back on whether or not there should be any policy protections for other protected classes. I think that we should be talking about what is the issue with saying Black Lives Matter,
Yes.
or Black Jobs Matter, or Black Banks Matter, or whatever else. We should be having that conversation. I think that doesn't start with Kamala, who obviously represents that and ensures that she's representing the best of the best every time she opens her mouth and is legislating on our behalf. Even with her criminal justice platform, with Cory Booker's criminal justice platform, there are a number of things that are working on our behalf. But there should be something said to the Democratic Party, the leadership in the House and the Senate, and the actual DNC. This is not acceptable. You know, you overwhelmingly use us. You take us for granted. We are loyal. We are a fiercely loyal voting bloc to that party. But we also should recognize that there is this type of false equivalence created when you say this group doesn't give us the credit we deserve versus this group completely, like they're running a campaign of hate against us.
100%.
So I don't think that means you have to pick or choose. I think that means that you hold the party that is most in alignment with your views responsible for saying, hey, I still don't have what I need. Part of that is on us.
Yes, and that's what I want to know. How do we finally get them to start doing what we need them to do, specifically for Black and brown communities? Because we are extremely loyal to them all the time.
I think by addressing it, but I don't think that you should start by saying we're getting pimped by you, right? I think that we should be running candidates who represent our values and are progressive. I think that we should be pushing forward a platform agenda that is representative of our values. I think we may be the only group that expects a party to do what we want them to do without them being told it or demanded. Like every other group, whether it's a Jewish voting bloc or a women voting bloc, they demand what their interests and needs are. We have to be that strategic instead of saying, you take me for granted. It's like, no, you can't take me for granted because here are my demands. If you don't meet my demands, I'm doing something else.
Like, what did you even ask for?
That's
that
right.
You didn't
So
get?
why don't we ever ask for
things.
anything? Because this has been going on for a long time. Al Sharpton once said that Democrats treat Black people like the mistress they don't want to be seen with.
I think the reality of it is there are a number of people. I never heard that, but I hear you. There are a number of people who do have demands, but they may not have the power of the platform. And so I would like to see more than anything else before I die, I would like to see us operate with a unified front instead of taking down all of the spokespeople we have. Well, I don't like this person because they're too loud. This person's too fat. This person's too old. This person, like we always have a reason. And it's just like, why can't we just find alignment on 5 things, right? And that doesn't mean that you can't have your other agenda items that you're moving, but can we please unite on 5 things to move the culture forward?
We talk about Chance the Rapper all the time and everything that he's doing in Chicago, and more people do need to step up to the plate and do those things.
And he didn't ask anybody for permission to do that. He just did it on his own.
And also, I think encouraging people to run for office that might not even think they have an opportunity to do those things is important. That is because our representation matters.
Yeah, that's why Trump's in the White House now.
I think that's 100% right. And the point that I think this election raises for us is, for once, it's not just like this Barack Obama figure. There are a number of people on every single level of government running for office who look like us and represent our interests. So hopefully people will see it's more possible, even in the South where people say it wasn't.
Right. We see where Andrew Gillum is right now.
And Stacey Abrams and so many other folks. There's a Black woman running for a Supreme Court justice seat in North Carolina. There are so many different levels of engagement. It's really, really good to see.
Now, if we don't get the House and Senate this year, then what? I don't want to say we, but if the Democrats don't.
You meant we.
No.
Oh,
yes,
you
did.
No.
What are you?
Black.
Anyway.
I represent Black people.
Okay, but your political leanings are...
Only reason I'm registered as a Democrat because you can't vote locally if you're not. But I would rather be independent.
You also can't vote in primaries if you're not.
Yes. So I would rather be independent. But I can't be. So I'm registered as a Democrat.
You sound crazy right now. What was your question before we went down this rabbit hole?
What if we don't get the House and Senate, then what?
So I think there's a lot. I think that, again, they're going to draw districts even more conservative leaning. So our voices will be even more marginalized. When you see, family separations, or you see Supreme Court justice nominations, or you see, these are things that are going to continue to be the whitening of America. As the country becomes more brown, the political process and the different pieces, the pillars of power, are going to look more and more like white folks and white supremacy. I think that is us endorsing, by not participating, white privilege and white supremacy. I really believe that.
I have a question for you, kind of off topic. Charlamagne's his conversation he was having with Kanye West. What were your thoughts on that? Because a lot of people.
Which conversation on air?
The Times Talk.
So first, let me say this.
He looks at you like a sister, so I'm just curious what your conversation was.
I don't look at her like a sister. That is my sister. Okay, don't look at.
Okay.
All right.
Whatever.
You feisty this morning.
As your brother, what were your thoughts?
Yeah. So I want to commend you for canceling the conversation. I think it was responsible.
Which I sought your counsel on last week.
Yeah, I was not commending you because you listened to me.
I figured he called you and you smacked him in the back of his head, but I wasn't sure.
But to be fair, you started the conversation with, I think I'm going to have to cancel this. So he was already there.
Okay.
So again, I was not commending myself.
So when he first called you and said, hey, I'm doing this Times talk with Kanye West.
Yeah, I did not like that. But when he said that he was going to...
why didn't you like it?
I just feel like we should not give him any additional opportunities to speak right now. It's to me, and this is not shade, it is clear that he is not well.
Correct.
It's not good for him, and it's not good for us.
No, it's not good for anybody. So I just think that, hopefully someone will be able to get through to him on not just the importance of medication, but the importance of speaking to someone who is licensed. And not broadcasting all of your pain and process. I don't think there's anything wrong with telling people that, mental illness is real and our mental well-being is super important. But I think that there comes a point where people are capitalizing, right, on what he's experiencing. And I don't think it's responsible. So I think that for you have a book coming out on this issue to show someone like going down the spiral is not the best use of your platform or the direction of the platform that you've developed and where you're going. I think as he continues to evolve, he's going to have to be more responsible with the way that he treats folks like Kanye, whether, we're mad at him or not, or whether it would result in ratings or tweets or, whatever.
Sneakers, right? Now, what do you think about...
First of all, I like those sneakers, okay?
I do too, but I had to put mine away.
You still wearing yours?
I sure do.
Now, Donald Trump.
They're comfortable.
I'm not talking
I got 40-year-old feet.
I'm not talking to you.
I haven't worn mine. I put them in the back of the closet. I ain't give them away yet, though. I ain't gonna lie. I ain't give them away yet.
I got corns.
We gonna go burn them, man.
On both baby toes.
You need to... There's podiatrists for that. Like,
now,
we can't help you with that.
Impeachment.
Yes.
Is that off the table now?
I think it very well could be if the makeup of the House and Senate don't change. The articles of impeachment start in the House. Of course, they've been introduced, but they are sitting. You have a number of Republicans who know that there are some severe problems with this president and are not willing to move the needle on this. They're applying more pressure on Robert Mueller to close out this investigation. Whether or not he has everything he needs, be damned, right? But I think we still have an opportunity. I hate to say it like that. We have an opportunity. But I think that he does not represent the best of who we are. He's calling women horse face, right? He's getting sued for defamation. And even though that lawsuit was thrown out, the fact of the matter is we know that he's not the most honest broker. He's got more than 1,500 Pinocchios on Washington Post for the number of lies he's told on a public platform, whether that's speaking or on Twitter.
That's a real thing? Pinocchio post?
Yeah, so it's a fact check. And the Pinocchios, if you get 5 Pinocchios, you're a liar, right? So yeah, it's a thing.
What about Kavanaugh? Can he be impeached?
I don't know about that. I think yes. Is it possible? Yes. I don't see the lane for that. And why? Because again, if the Republicans maintain control of the House, I don't see a pathway for that.
What did you think about that whole FBI investigation and Donald Trump saying that he was proven innocent?
So the FBI investigation was severely limited, not just in time, but also scope. There's no way that they could have talked to all of the people who could have actually attested to or defended Kavanaugh in any real way. They did not even allow them to speak to all of the potential witnesses. So that's one problem. Going back to impeachment specifically, Republicans are quiet for the most part about Donald Trump. Envy, also going back to your question on impeachment, because they are like, well, we're winning on taxes. We're winning on economic interests, at least for super rich folks. And we want these conservative judges on the bench. This is what we've been wanted. This is why we fought Barack Obama tooth and nail on Merrick Garland and his nomination. This is exactly why. So they'll be quiet on all of the ethics and morality and everything to get their ultimate interest, which is to make sure that as they politicize the bench, it becomes more and more conservative.
I know one main concern is, will Roe versus Wade be overturned? Is that a real concern that we have?
I have concerns about everything they can do now. Like I brought up this the Supreme Court case about Ohio and then purging voters if you miss more than 3 elections earlier, because that was in June. That was before Kavanaugh. So I'm telling you for sure the Supreme Court decisions that we see coming out will be more and more conservative. He said at one point that was settled law. He being Kavanaugh saying that Roe versus Wade is settled law, but I don't really trust him. He's also, said that he thinks that their president shouldn't be censured and all of these other things that would protect Donald Trump if he did engage in any criminal activity. So I don't know where he's going to land on that.
Well, thank you for joining us and keeping us up to date.
I know, man.
We really appreciate
I want
you.
everybody to go out there and vote on November 6th, though.
And before, there are a number of states that have early voting.
Georgia's doing it now, right?
Yes.
Yes.
If you're told that you can't vote, what should you do? If for whatever reason, I know that there are certain things that you can do to actually be able to vote still. So what if you get there and they're like, I'm sorry, you're not eligible to vote?
The first thing I would do, there's an election protection hotline number, and I wish I would have pulled it for this. I think it's 1-866 Our Vote. I think.
Well, we can look it up. It's called the
election protection. So every election, there are a group of lawyers and civil rights organizations that come together to do exactly that, Angela, be a resource for folks who say they're not able to cast their ballots. The other thing that I think is extremely important is if you know you didn't vote last time, and you can't remember the last time you voted, definitely check the status of your voter registration.
Okay.
If you know your HIV status, you can know your voter registration status too, and you should find out. Make sure that you have not been purged from the rolls. Make sure, especially in states like Georgia where they're doing the name, the exact match on names. Make sure that
But you
you're
can
registered.
still vote, though. Like if
You can ask for a provisional ballot, but I also want folks, before they get ready to go vote, to check their status to make sure it's
866
active.
Our Vote. Like
Oh,
you said,
good.
866 Our Vote.
And before we
That's
go,
all
put
right.
Envy and Angela on the spot about what you want to do for early elections.
Oh, okay.
Put them on the
So
spot.
I'm in.
you're in. Do you know what it is already?
What, go to Florida,
We're
go
going
to
to
Atlanta, go to
Florida
these places?
And Georgia.
Georgia.
I want to do something where we have a big rally for early voting. So right outside of an early voting precinct, we have Breakfast Club Live. You can talk to candidates. You can talk to some of the folks around there, do a town hall on their interests, and
That's
then
dope.
have them go cast the vote.
And then at nighttime, we can go to party. We can do the club.
He's like, and I need
Oh
to go
my
get my
gosh.
check. He's like,
This
hey,
is soon,
hey,
though. This is
hey.
in the next couple weeks.
Didn't tell me nothing.
Yeah,
That's
we
fine.
can
I was
have-
trying to
Strip
make it
club
happen
open
last
24/7.
time.
You were?
Last
we are-
time we
we're
tried to get him
same
to come
mind,
out, but it was
same mind.
impossible. But this time,
I'm there.
now
Let's
that
do
you
it.
have, yes.
I'm doing it.
And we can do free breakfast, feed the
Yes,
people.
I'm
Right?
with it.
It's called the Breakfast Club.
Well,
Good morning.
yeah.
Be the first time we
See
ever
what I
serve
did there?
I
breakfast.
see what you did. We can do that. I'm there.
Yay.
Yay.
Charlamagne, you're going, right?
Yes, I'm definitely going.
Not in
We
them
can't get
damn
him to come
Yeezys.
anywhere,
Not
but-
them Yeezys.
Oh, I'm definitely had a Yeezy.
If you wear, like this is what's gonna happen. I'm gonna
definitely
Throw
had
the
a
shoe.
Yeezys.
Can we see if Kanye will come with us?
no.
My
He can come if he promises not to talk.
My goodness. All right. It's the Breakfast Club. It's Angela Rye.